Welcome to My Life as a Landlord, where we educate curious U.S. and Canadian landlords, answer rental questions, and clear up confusions about all things housing. If you're looking for some landlord education, interesting guests, and awkward conversations, you've come to the right show. I'm your host, Dr. Jennifer Salisbury. This is My Life as a Landlord. Welcome to it.
Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I encountered my guest today by happenstance, comparing notes on how to provide rentals in the US and Canada and beyond by building them. She's a mom, she's a landlord, and she's outside of Ottawa, here to talk about intentional small-scale development, building to rent, is Natalie Cloutier. Welcome, Natalie.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much to have me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you. Well, I have to chuckle because we always talk about what did you really want to be when you grew up? It probably wasn't a landlord, right?
A landlord, no, I never thought I'd be a landlord, but building, I always saw myself as a builder. I always knew that I was going to do house plans. Maybe, you know what, maybe not so much a builder, but I thought that I always envisioned myself, as a designer doing the house plans and then walking on site and visiting those drawings coming to life. So that vision sort of came to life, but in a completely different way that I never would have imagined.
So you shared with me that growing up, your mom mentioned that, everyone else is playing with pirate ships and drawing rainbows and you weren't.
No, no. I always had this knack of just like drawing houses. I had blocks and stuff, and instead of building like a pyramid or like a tower that just goes all the way up, I was doing room sketches. I was doing a square and saying this is my bedroom, and then the square beside is my sister's bedroom, and I was doing house plans. So that's been in my DNA since birth.
It's birth. I love it. That's so funny. That's so funny. Well, let's just start at the beginning. I know you had started as a builder with custom homes, and then you got into rentals, and then there's sort of a progression there. But walk us through it. I mean, a designer by your genes, you wanted to really design houses, and you grew up with a passion for that. But how did you get into this? Ending up building and doing more.
Yeah, it started. I like I said, I always wanted to be a designer, do house plans, and so I did that. I did it for 5 years right out of college. I met my husband in college. Actually, we were both studying architecture, and it's architecture technology. So we're not architects. We're like I call it the architect's bitch. You're the cat and monkey doing the drawings for the architect. And so we would do when we met in college, we always talked about maybe doing like houses with as a business later on. And then I started as a house custom house draftsman. For 5 years, I did that, and then eventually we just realized, that we could keep going and do this for ourselves. But really, it started because when we graduated from college, we bought a condo together through the CMHC higher interest rate program as a first time buyer. And we realized that we really weren't condo people. We didn't really like it. And so we tried to sell it. It wouldn't sell. So we had to put it for rent in order to move forward with our other plans, which was building our own house. And the only way we decided to build our own house is because my parents told us about this loan that you can do where you can replace your down payment with sweat equity. So you go in there, you do a lot of work yourself, and instead of having to put money up front, you kind of you divert that. And so it was the only way we could afford to have a house because we didn't have large salaries, we didn't have any savings, anything like that, and we were only 19. So we did that. Long story short, we designed our house, we built it, and we designed it with a basement apartment, which turned out to be house hacking later on. That wasn't a term back then. And so yeah, and then after we built that, we decided to build a duplex because we're like, oh, this could be like a retirement plan because we don't have any benefits or retirement savings with our jobs. And then we built another one. We're like, oh, that one maybe we'll sell in a couple of years and it'll just be like a quick profit. And then, long story short, we just kept building because once you do one deal, you get hooked and you do like 10,000 deals. So yeah.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, especially if you're building in the same geographic area, your vendors get used to you, your bankers, your insurance people, your entire group that helps you build from start to finish, whether it's permitting or all the way to occupancy, even if you're going to do, property management or you're going to self-manage, either way, all the way through. once you get used to these people and you create these great relationships, it's almost like you don't want to say goodbye,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Because it makes it so much easier to
Yeah.
just manage anything. And so no, it's hard to switch markets after you've done at least just a couple or even, you know.
Yeah. We've broken into new markets, and it's really difficult because, even, the material suppliers, they don't know us. And so it's
Yeah.
like, no, you're net 15 or due on receipt. And it's like, okay,
Yeah,
no, I really need 60 or 90 days, but they don't have that history with us.
exactly.
And so it's tough. Yeah, you're really breaking in. So it's tough.
And
Now,
it's tough to have good service too. That's
well,
what we found when we switched. We did a market, like a new market with a, when we did our cottage renovation, and we found that people just weren't taking us seriously because we were out
hmm.
of towners, and so you don't get the same quality of service.
Isn't that interesting? I mean,
Yeah.
I get that especially in Hawaii as well when someone's coming in and they're brand new to the area, and it's sort of like the old hat. I mean, there's only so many contractors on the islands in Hawaii, right? And
That's true. Yeah, that must be even harder.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then the trades are going away. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's like my excavator's broken down here. I'm at the RV park we're building in British Columbia. Our excavator's broken down, and we have been waiting literally for 2 weeks for the mechanic to come with the computer to plug it in. And it's like, seriously, I can't even get him to come faster. I mean, there's nobody here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, that must be hard. Yeah.
it's
It's just
tough.
adding another layer of I don't know, difficulty.
Well, and it's stressful. I mean, as much as I love when we get in the pipeline and we're doing renovations and we're doing building, and even what we're doing here with creating this RV park, it's you're heading towards burnout. And
Yeah.
this is where you get completely overwhelmed, completely just sort of run off the wheel. And I
Yep.
mean, I'm assuming you've experienced that too. How could you not?
Yeah, no, exactly. We had a really, COVID was tough, having to go through maneuver that. We were just about ready to kind of put our business on autopilot and be able to take a step back. And then when COVID hit, we had to go back to our old ways of doing a lot of things ourselves because it just wasn't affordable during the builds. Yes, the interest rates were cheap, they were like free, but cost of material and trades were just soaring like crazy. And so we knew that we wanted to stay under leverage. So that was a pivot. And then when interest rates rose, and that was a different pivot again. So we're constantly pivoting, and 2025 was just another hassle. And yeah, we burned out. My husband is recuperating from a burnout just now, and it's not
Mm.
easy. It's we're gonna take a little break after this build that we're doing now, and we're gonna kind of revamp our business and refigure out, do we even want to keep, doing the same thing or in the same market? It's more the market that it's the issue. We had a lot of problems with the city. Or do we want to do a like a still we'd still build because we love it, but would it be different? Or I think that the answer is just a different market, but we'll see.
Interesting. Now you have a different approach. Mike and I kind of do onesie twosie, but we can also do larger projects as well. And you like to do more small scale stuff. Tell us
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, we like to stay small scale because I think the reason why in the beginning is because my I have a family history that did development. My grandfather did development, and he bankrupted in the 80s when the oil crisis happened and the interest rates rose a lot. And so but the problem with him is that it was when you're developing land where you have to bring in all the services and stuff like that, there's a lot more risk to that, and there's a lot more capital that needs to be put down, and it's a waiting game and all that. Even though back then it wasn't as there wasn't as much red tape as there is today. You're not doing all these environmental studies, and it's more like these paper napkin deals that you're making with the banks. But I think that's one of the risks that was involved. It wasn't as watched as it is today, but also he wasn't retaining any equity. He was building to sell.
Mhm.
And so I think we were just a little bit more cautious to want to stay away from that kind of development. We prefer infill projects when the services are already there, where it's easier to get your permit, where you're not waiting years before, to do all the impact studies and everything you got to do, and it's shovel ready within the same year of purchase. So you're eliminating a lot of risk. It's faster. It's very easily scalable too. We do it with I call it the BRRRR 2.0. So for those who understand what the traditional BRRRR is of doing the buy, rent, refinance, and repeat thing, we do build, rent, refinance, and repeat. And so the way that you can keep your your kind of your loop going with that is that if you can build conservatively enough on like a fourplex, a sixplex, and you can recoup all of the money that you initially had to put in without leaving a penny in, hopefully even drawing out an amount to pay yourself a salary or whatnot, then you have an infinite ROI and you can easily turn it over to the next project. You can grow your team. We have like a small but mighty team who can take two, three builds at a time, and it just eliminates so much risk. So I'm not interested at all in going in bigger development. I like our strategy. We've dabbled in bigger development. We did a sixplex where we had to bring in the services, and there's like phase two and three on that lot that we could keep doing on it. And I'm honestly not interested in doing like a nineplex or 12plex on it. I might just like divide the lot in three and do three sixplexes instead because it's just easier. And especially after having a hassle with the city, I can't even imagine how it would be to do a bigger development.
Okay, tell us more what the hassle was.
So what happened, and this is going on not just in Ontario, but across, Canada and the US. There's all these new bills and incentives, I should say. Incentivization is not a word. But the governments are trying to incentivize builders to build more affordable housing by removing all the red tape and by lowering here in Ontario, the development charges especially are crazy expensive. And so by doing that, so what they did in 2023 is that basically if before your zoning allowed for, let's say, just a single family home, and you were allowed to add an ADU, so an additional dwelling unit, an apartment in the basement or whatnot, now this new bill allows you to add an extra ADU on top of what was already allowed. So
Mm,
what that does is that it eliminates a lot of red tape. So you can build a triplex, a sixplex even, because if you were allowed to do a side-by-side duplex before with an ADU in the basement, now you're allowed to add a second ADU like on the second floor, and that turns into a sixplex, making it affordable housing on a dense lot where you're not paying all these crazy development charges and where it's just the process is streamlined. You can build it
mhm.
faster. So that's kind of what happened. And so when we were the first ones in the market to start this strategy, we started with a triplex that is behind here. I don't know if you have a YouTube of a
I
visual.
do.
Okay, perfect. So those looking, they'll be able to see maybe in the back. It used to be a duplex, and when that bill came in, we ripped the roof off. We set it on the front lawn, built up a third unit, and then we put the roof back on. So that was a really cool project, and that was the first one we did when the bill came out. But then we started exploring the sixplex possibilities, and that's where we kind of pushed our luck with the city because they really didn't like it because they're losing a lot of money on this since they don't have to charge the development charges on all six units. They only charge it on the two main dwellings. And
Mm.
so they lose like $100,000 up front when you're picking up your permit. So obviously they didn't like that, but that's what the province of Ontario was gunning for. And but the provincial government is not enforcing it on the municipalities, so the municipalities can still do whatever they want with that. And so they
Mm.
tried to go around it and say, and fight it and say no. But we kept fighting against it, and it took us about, well, the length of the build, so a good eight months to fight it. We won, but it was such a hassle and a stressful event to deal with, and so I can't even imagine what it would be like on phase two and three to keep going with that battle.
The grief to dollars ratio sometimes doesn't pencil out, but also you also can't back down for the sake of principle. So
That's
even
the
though
thing.
you won, it was like, okay, at what cost,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so very
Yeah.
stressful. Well, I mean, I'm developing in some of the most hostile places on the planet, especially in Hawaii,
Yeah.
trying to do permits and things on Hawaii. And you and I've talked about bureaucracy, and it's interesting because the employees at municipalities are operating based on policy, but the policy is made by the elected officials. And it
Exactly.
seems that none of them are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, no, I think honestly, there's not much to say, but you're right. That's how it is. It's more people who have always lived or worked in a government position where you're not living, I always call it, you're not living in the real world. It's not there. Every time that I would talk to an official and I'm like, what's your history? And when I notice, you can tell right away that they haven't done real one-on-one work with the public and living their real life because what they're asking for or what they're hoping for, it's like that doesn't exist. And there's no common sense very often behind those type of thinkers. And that's what causes a lot of these problems, that we're having.
Wow. It's tough. I think there's going to be a lot more battling, especially as the builders like you and me and the housing providers who are entrepreneurs signing the front of a paycheck,
Yep.
and we're working with policymakers, elected officials, and others. It's tough because there's, a lot of the folks that are dictating to us what we have to do have never created a budget. They've never
Yep.
had to work within the confines of, and if they have created a budget, it was not for themselves.
Yeah.
It's very different when you're playing with your own money.
100%. Yeah.
And fair enough. And fair
Yeah.
enough. And as a landlord with the tenancy law perspective, Ontario and BC, that's tough. It's
Yeah.
really tough. And Quebec, you throw some of these big provinces in, it's really difficult to that once you build it and then you transition it with a tenant and then now you've got to operate it. It's tough too. And so again, the grief to dollars ratio still has to pencil out as you go
Yeah.
through. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about creating operating systems too, so that you don't have emotions in and it can just be more of an automated thing and have somebody else like I have a VA now who takes care of all of the day-to-day tasks so that I don't have to be as involved. And like you said, the group too, like it just makes more sense when you're not involved in the small things because you can take a step back and you don't have your plate full with that stuff. Whereas my VA, it's his job, but it's not his assets. So he'll just do his work, his nine
Right.
to five, go home, and he doesn't think about it after. Whereas me, when I would do that during the day, I'd go home and still think about it at night because it bothered me. Now, I can sleep better at night having handed those off and knowing that there's a system in place to take care of it. So I think that's really important for people to remember when they're being a landlord.
How did you decide that you needed a VA?
Uh, Honestly, that just came from being a mom, and being busy and realizing that I didn't want to send my kid to daycare full time. I wanted him to have a hybrid life before he started school because it might be like, we're not sure we're going to have other kids. I think we're happy with the one. And so I'm like, this is the only time he's going to be this young and then I'm going to have this time. And I know it was going to go by fast. And so it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but that's just how it happened. My husband's brother was looking for work and he said, you know what, I would like to like maybe start and help you guys. If you need help, let me know. And I'm like, well, you know what? Let's do this. And so we started 16 hours a week. He lives 8 hours from here. So that's why I call him, it's very virtual. He's not in the office. But he did a great job and he took the work at heart. And that's when I kind of realized I need to take an even bigger step back and let him handle it and trust that he can do it because he obviously could. And so, yeah, now he's full time and it's great. And I don't want to go back to doing stuff myself.
So he does your emails. Does he do your calendar as well?
Yeah, emails, calendar. Calendar is mostly me because it's such a mess that sometimes it's easier for me to do. Especially with like my podcast and my book launch and stuff. I
Right.
haven't really given him that task. He takes care of bookkeeping, construction management. Sometimes the team on site will send him stuff for him to do, like to coordinate material deliveries and stuff like that. And he'll do all the rental payments, tracking those rent payments, maintenance work orders and all that stuff, water bills that need to be paid and then reimbursed, all those little tedious tasks that just wipe me out at the end of the week.
That's amazing. Good for
Yeah.
you. So I have to applaud you because there's a lot of people listening who are going, that'd be really nice, but how do I do it? Great book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan
Yeah.
Martell. And that's the first thing he says is get an assistant and get them to take care of your emails and your calendar. And I've tried a VA. I did not have a successful experience with the VA, but what it did do is it made me level up. And so now when I go back to hire a VA, it's going to happen. It's just inevitable. Then I know what the scope of work for my VA will be, which is great. So, and you've tailored your VA too, which is fantastic. Good for you.
Plus, I had my VA create SOPs. So instead of
Even
me,
better.
I
Yeah.
had started doing standard operating procedures. I had started writing them. And then when he came in, I'm like, when you've got some free time, this is part of your work. I want you to keep working on the SOPs, whatever you're doing. You take screenshots, video, you put them at a step by step so that if ever you leave or something happens to me, somebody else can come in and the work can keep happening without us, right? So I knew that, and that's something I learned working at my government job, surprisingly. But I knew that, yeah, we were just talking about that, but that's
Shocking.
something, yeah, it's something that I knew was important for any kind of business to keep. You can't rely on one person. The business has to keep going, right? So,
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Good for you. Well, let's talk about this. This is
yes.
your book. So I've got, if you're watching it, My Life as a Landlord YouTube channel, I've got her the Build to Rent Strategy book in front of us. So at what point did you think I need to put everything I know in a book?
That was a couple years ago. I had started with a very, well, a simpler version in 2023. I think I launched it. I had started writing it when I got pregnant in 2020, and then, life gets busy with a kid. And so I think I launched the smaller version in 2023. And then, the reason why was because I had a bit of a growing Instagram following, and I had a lot of questions on a daily basis. And I was like, yeah, you know what? This is all info that I should be putting in writing for everybody to have access to, because I didn't have that information when
Mhm.
I started, and it would have been such a nice thing to have, for people to learn from other people's mistakes. And so I had wrote it in that small version, and then as time went with that version, I had a lot of people say, "Hey, you didn't talk about this though, and what about this?" And I'm like, "Okay, so I need to fully expand on the book." And so I did a full version and launched it. Just actually, it officially launched this week.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is fun. And you mentioned, do you have a podcast? If you
No, I
do,
don't.
okay, but you've been on other podcasts. I know you have, which is pretty
Yes.
cool. So if listeners out there, if you have not heard her on other podcasts, just search for Natalie Cloutier because
Y-
she's out there a lot. That's
I've
great.
been on Bigger Pockets and Better Life with Brandon Turner, a couple of big ones that I
Yeah,
really like, and I've just done like seven other recently for the book launch. Obviously, I'm promoting the book, but yeah, it's been fun. I like meeting all the people across the states and Canada, and it's fun.
that's so cool. Well, as our listeners typically are either newbie landlords, so they're brand new to landlording, whether regardless of their biological age, or they're nugget landlords, which again, regardless of their biological age, they know 98% of what we're saying, but they're mining for the nugget. They're mining for the word or the form or the something. And that's who's listening. And let's talk really landlord tactics for a second.
Sure.
Um, how do you handle when friends or family approach you as potential tenants?
We try. So a lot earlier in the years, we learned that, we had to draw a line. We created policies, internal policies that we kind of just wrote on a Word document. And we said, okay, we need to make sure that we follow these because we don't want to fall into traps. So early on, one of the mistakes we had done is we had hired a tenant to do work on a property. And
Mhm.
obviously that didn't go well. And so we realized, okay, that's something we can never repeat again. We need to make sure this becomes a policy where we will not hire tenants to do work. And then we realized, you know what? We should probably expand on these policies and make sure that we don't hire friends and family as well. And then we're like, well, if we're not hiring them, we probably shouldn't have them as tenants either, because it just blurs the line, right? When you're mixing pleasure with business, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we really didn't want to ruin relationships. We didn't want to make, our tenant, we didn't want to blur the lines too of landlord and tenant versus boss and hired help kind of thing. And so, yeah, we just put that in writing. We never had a bad experience of like renting to family members. It hasn't happened. But I think it helps to have those policies in place in case that comes up. Obviously, if I have a family member who's in a really big bind, I will try to help them. But my first take would be to try to send them to somebody I know, another landlord, somebody else I know, because I think it's just important to keep it as a business, have a business mindset, and keep emotions out, which is hard to do if you're renting to a family member.
Right. Now, what's your take on pets?
we're okay with pets, but we do put a policy in place for that too. We say you're allowed to have two pets, but one dog. So you can have a dog and a cat, a dog and a bird, or whatever, but we try to limit it to one dog per unit because it does become chaotic if you have a sixplex and all tenants have two dogs each. You have 12 dogs in a building and it just becomes crazy.
Mhm.
But it's very hard to say no pets at all. For one thing, in Ontario, it's actually technically illegal. You're not supposed to say no pets, or you're not supposed to say or refuse someone's application based on having pets. Plus, like, oh man, so many people have pets nowadays, and we don't want to put away people with great tenants just because they're dog lovers. That's great. I'm a dog lover too. So
Mhm.
so we just put, policies in place, and we say that if ever the dog ruins the enjoyable state of the property, then we will have to either put new rules or restrictions in place, or we'll have to ask you to maybe find another place to live. But it's never happened before. Usually they correct the issue. We try to get really good tenants. We check for references. And if they do have pets, when we check references, we inquire about those pets to those references so that we know that they're responsible pet owners. I've had an issue once in my sister's apartment. My sister has an apartment in her house too, and she had dogs that were not well taken care of. They had a big issue, and so but we ended up evicting them. We gave them cash for keys to leave, and I took over the file until they left because my sister was, having a lot of stress with that.
Ah,
But again, I hadn't vetted those tenants. She had just rented to the kind of the first person who came in, which you learn as you go. But I helped her through that, and that was so far that's the only issue we've had with major issue, I should say, we had with pets. Do you not rent
gotcha.
with for pets or?
Oh no, I do. I
Okay.
do. And so but it's property specific. We have a 12-plex,
Okay.
and so that and it's shared laundry, and we've had lots
Yeah.
of issues with cat hair and cat allergies and things. So we don't allow cats there, and especially because it's there's staircases, and so people were pegging the staircases open to let their cats in and out, and it's like, you know what, this is not working. And
Yeah.
so that's a no cat property. And the other thing is that they would let their cats out, and then they would poop all over the parking area or in the grass area, and nobody would clean it up. I
Yeah.
find dog owners are much more responsible, not perfect, but
Yeah.
much more responsible with picking up their dog's poo, right?
Yeah.
That's an issue. But we don't allow anybody to have an aquarium, whether it's wet or dry. If it's wet,
True.
that's fish, and that's a water hazard. And then if it's dry, it's usually either like a mouse or a guinea pig or a reptile, and we don't allow any of those either. And so
Oh,
pretty
that's
much,
interesting.
yeah, dogs, and we don't allow small animals either. So like we've had people request rabbits, but it's we always take it on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
We have had problems with aggressive dogs where we've had dog bites. We've had a tenant's
Okay.
dog bite another tenant's child. That was terrible.
Yeah.
They ended up having to correct the behavior of the dog and locks and all kinds of things. But I mean, they were basically going to euthanize this dog.
Hmm.
And so anyway, it's been really interesting. But when I'm finding with aggressive dogs, if people have to change their behavior because of an animal. It doesn't have to be a dog. It could be a cat. It could be any kind of animal. If people are going, "Oh, so and so's home or this animal's out," if they're changing their normal behavior, like they're not going to laundry or they're not going out because this animal is around, that right there is not okay. That's
Hmm.
part of what I would call quiet enjoyment, is that these people have to now change their
Yep.
behavior because of animal.
Yeah.
Animal is impacting their behavior. So I am very much pet friendly. Um, and
With
but
an asterisk.
yeah, but an asterisk going, you have to have your, like you say, you have to have your standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
Well, Natalie, we started today's episode talking about your passion for design, and I feel like we've kind of veered off. You talked
Yeah.
about city and policy and being a mom, and your husband is recovering from a project, and are you going to get back to your roots of designing?
I would kind of love to, but at the same time, not so much. So what I
Okay.
loved about designing, I love being able to create layouts of homes. That's really where I thrive. That's like everybody has like a special power of what they can do, or
Hmm.
that. So that was me. Like I love being able to lay out homes and stuff. But when it comes down to drawing the the actual working drawings, like the construction drawings, I get so bored. I get really bored at doing construction drawings, and like, and I say that because I just finished a plan for one of our employee who is about to build his own home. I had a lot of fun designing it with him, and now I just did 2 days of sitting in the office of drawing the construction drawings, and I don't miss that part. I can't sit in an office anymore full time, and so I would love to, maybe if I were to start designing again, I would do the designs and then I would outsource the construction drawing part to somebody else and kind of start a business that way. But yeah, I don't know if it's something I'm going to get it back into right now. But you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, it could be fun. Could be fun for like a future little side hustle, to kind of pass the time if we're not building right away.
Natalie, we've talked about, you and I are both female and we're both alpha females, and we don't see a lot of females in this environment. And here's the funny thing. There are lots of females in this environment, but you don't see them as the champion. Why do you think that is?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know if it's still just a man's world,
Mhm.
or if it's just that as women usually we're just focused on being a mom very often. Like I know that's one of the things for me. It's sometimes, and it's one of the reasons why we're going to be taking a break from the business because I'm realizing that there are more important things. So I don't know. It depends. I think everybody is completely different. You can be an alpha male an alpha female if that's what you want to do. But it can take a toll because I think as women,
Yeah.
we take things a lot more seriously and at heart. And so we
Mhm.
put more of our time and effort into things or thought process, maybe like our heads are spinning all the time. And so maybe it could tire us out more. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you're right. And I think it just depends on the season of life. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a mom, and we just finished a project. Well, I just say just, oh, it was over 2 years ago that we finished a big build, but it's just the ebb and flow of your time and your energy and the role you're playing and the identity you have.
Yeah.
My identity has now shifted to podcaster and
Yeah.
to trainer. And but I'm still a contractor, I'm still a builder, and I'm still a wife. And
Yeah.
so I think it just depends on everybody's season of life. But I agree with you, it depends.
Yeah. And you know what? That's what the beauty of being a landlord and being able to do what you want with your time. You can choose to do this job or a certain job or be a business owner and killing at it for X amount of years, and then you can pivot to something else because you have that option. You can choose to kind of plug in your years the way you want to with the cycle of your life. So I think that it was worth the grinding that we did for the past 10, 11 years. And I think that now we deserve a little break and we deserve a shift.
Yeah,
I
for
think it's
sure.
okay. Yeah.
That's amazing. Natalie, if a listener wants to get a hold of you, how would they contact you?
I do have a website, www.thenewbuildcouple.com. And there you can send me an email. I have a link to my book in there too, both US and Canada. And I'm starting to sell some plans. That's one of the things I'm going to be doing this winter. I'm going to be sitting down and taking my models, my fourplexes, my sixplexes, my duplexes, and putting them in a way that people can just download and purchase. And so they could maybe redesign with their local municipality and rebuild or something. So if that's something that people are interested in, I'm also very active on Instagram, so you can follow me on Instagram, the New Build Couple. Send me a message on there, and I have a lot of content on there that can kind of maybe inspire or help, hopefully, one or two people out there.
I love it. Natalie, thanks so much for being with us today. Any parting thoughts?
Parting thoughts. No, I think I'm out for today.
I love you're so raw. It's awesome.
I'm out. No, I think just, do what you got to do. And it's one thing I always say, don't compare yourself to others, put your head down and focus on your goals and what you want to do and who cares what everybody else is doing. And also, another favorite quote, I'm saying I don't want to say anything and now I'm coming up with a bunch of stuff, but one of my favorite quotes is to be free in life, you have to be disciplined. And so I think that and it's funny because it sounds like it contradicts each other, but it's true. Yeah, if you want to be free, you have to be disciplined with your time, with where you put your energy. And so I think it's important for people to make a list and know what they where they want to be in 5 years, and just hone in on that goal.
Great advice. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Don't forget to subscribe for more expert advice and real landlord stories from across the globe. We're recording this episode today in Powell River, British Columbia, right outside our new RV park. Why? Because real estate takes you places. Where do you want real estate to take you? Join me next week for episode 188, where I do what's called a cringe video. Best seen on YouTube at My Life as a Landlord, I walk you through how I cracked the code on starting and consistently working out. I'll see you there. Thanks for joining us this week. For all the show notes and resources, check out mylifeasalandlord.com. Want to invest further in your landlord education? We've got a toolbox for you, wherever you are in your journey. Make sure you follow the podcast on the platform you're listening on. Thank you again for joining me, Dr. Jennifer Salisbury, in this episode of My Life as a Landlord. I'll see you next time.